Hey, Sully, how are you today?
What's happening, man? We just had on Tim Watson of Cedar Creek. Obviously, they got some big losses to try to recover from in terms of graduation with four-year starter quarterback Jesse Millsap, Bo Melton, Owen Bowles, Isaiah Watson. So really the core of their offense is gone, so they're going to be looking for somebody to step up. And a lot of teams are in that situation as well. I mean, you look at a team like Oak Crest and Ocean City, both lost four-year starters at quarterback. So that's kind of the interesting thing about high school football is every couple of years you get these new crops of players have to step up, and we find out some new stars.
Yeah, the cycle continues, and you look at Cedar Creek, and back when those first couple of seasons when they had the older Mitchell and Melton guys there to kind of lead the way, it was a matter of time before this group came through, and now this group is out, and now we're not looking for the next one. And when you build a program, you have guys waiting in the wings that you've developed, and they're kind of waiting for their time. So obviously, not just at Cedar Creek, but at a lot of other schools where a large number of seniors graduated, it's time for these other guys to step up and see what they can do. It's become their time, and the success, I guess, of these these teams that are in these kind of situations depends on whether these guys have put in the work and done what it's necessary to get to this point to where they can take over. So, Cedar Creek, you look at them, obviously a team that's been very successful and still a relatively very young school in the grand scheme of things. But, I think Tim Watson does a great job down there. They've always, in these years, they've seemed to have generated some very good athletes. So I think, despite the what would probably be classified as severe losses, I think there's some other kids in there that'll be ready to accept the challenge and try to rise to the occasion.
Yeah, we'll get back to the Independence Division here in just a minute. Freedom Division, a little bit out of our coverage range, obviously, but that's one of the more wide open divisions. You're talking about teams like New Egypt, Florence, Palmyra. This was the only division that didn't have at least one team with 7 wins, and I believe only one playoff team. So I guess that's kind of up in the air. And then you look at the Liberty, a couple interesting teams, Cinnaminson and Willingboro. Cinnaminson won the division last year, but Willingboro had a pretty nice playoff run where they took down Haddonfield in the first round, which is not easy to do in any year. And then they lost that real heartbreaker to Cedar Creek in the second round of South Jersey 2. You also got Holy Cross in there and the other teams like Bordentown, Delran, and Robbinsville, obviously in kind of rebuilding mode. But Willingboro and Cinnaminson, that could be a pretty tight race for that division again this year.
Yeah, if you look at the Liberty, I think they're two teams that kind of jump out at you right now, Cinnaminson and Willingboro. And Willingboro is kind of a team that always seems to have some athletes, but for whatever reason, I guess maybe couldn't get that continuity together. But I think that's a team that people should keep an eye on this year. Really based on what they've done last year, they have a couple solid kids coming back. A very good receiver in David Green, and a solid linebacker. I believe his last first name is Albert. I believe it's Albert Na. So they'll be a decent team. Cinnaminson, they'll be in the mix. They're always Mario Patrizi does a great job with them. They're always a very competitive team. This year they'll have to deal with the loss of Sean Davila, which was one of their big 2, 3, 4-year players, and they'll have to they'll be reloading a little bit, but like I said, those two teams are probably the ones in there to beat. And Holy Cross is kind of a team that's always consistently been there and always been a very competitive team through the years. Jeff Undercuffler, about 6'5", 6'6" now, will be at the quarterback spot again. They'll be in decent shape. They're a team that likes to run the football a little bit. Really had been more of a passing team. If you want to look at it that way, I think they're more of a 60-40 passing team, but they should be okay. And they got a running back, Tim Petroselli, who's pretty good too. So they'll be a decent team. So I think that while you look at Cinnaminson and Willingboro maybe as the top 2 out of the 6, I think Holy Cross is definitely in the mix. And you talked about the Freedom just real briefly. That's a division of Group 1 schools, very small. The small schools in the region and they're all Burlington County, except for New Egypt, which is out on the edge of Burlington County and Ocean County. But I think the player to watch there in the Freedom Division is Taj Harris, a senior at Palmyra, wide receiver, one of the best in South Jersey, headed to Syracuse. So, like I said, the Freedom's a lot of small schools. Florence is probably the one school that might stick out the most out of them. Joe Frapoli, the second winningest coach in South Jersey history, looking to get up there and get closer to the ranks of Paul Sacco at St. Joe this year. So that should be another, it's a competitive group amongst those small schools. And, Taj Harris, like I said, of Palmyra is probably the key player to watch in that division.
Now, Kevin, when you look at the Memorial Division, pretty interesting because you have Paulsboro in there, which won a South Jersey title last year, went 10-2. They didn't even win the division because Woodbury went 5-0 inside the division and had a real nice year before they got kind of ran into that Salem buzzsaw in the playoffs. How do you see this division shaking out? I mean, Paulsboro is obviously one of those teams that year in and year out puts together a pretty good football program. I mean, you also have Haddon Heights, the top three teams in this division, combined for 24 wins. So that's a lot of wins between just three teams.
Yeah, you look at this division. This is the six smaller schools which coming out of the Colonial Conference, and last year was their first year in the West Jersey Football League. And Paulsboro-Woodbury game was the first game of the season. So Woodbury got them, obviously extremely early. You couldn't get any earlier. And if I remember right, it was a pretty close game. So, Woodbury was a pretty decent team last year. They got Paulsboro. If that game is not game one of the season, we may be looking at a Paulsboro team that also won the division. So, Glenn Howard, but Paulsboro, another one of South Jersey's winningest coaches. Tremendous respect for Glenn Howard and what he's been able to accomplish at Paulsboro. Not only winning games, but sending kids to college and the NFL for that matter. So, Paulsboro is obviously, when you look at that division, Paulsboro and Woodbury are the two schools that jump out at you at the most. And then, like you said, you throw Haddon Heights in there. I think of between Gateway, Haddon Township, and Lindenwold, Heights is probably, you're looking at probably the third team right there, because you kind of always look at Paulsboro and Woodbury as the two teams to beat, and the winner of that initial game, obviously, basically year in and year out has the upper hand as far as what ultimately happens in the division. So, like I said, the small schools again, Group 1 schools. I'm not certain off the top of my head if Heights moved up to Group 2 this year with the classifications, but basically the small schools in the state or in South Jersey at Group 1 schools, and always competitive games. Pretty much, when these teams play. Haddon Township is a team that struggled for a little bit, and I think they're trying to get things back together. And Lindenwold's another team that has had some struggles here and there, but usually is playing competitive games. So another decent season, I think. With obviously, I think Paulsboro and Woodbury have the teams to beat.
Talk with Kevin Minnick, South Jersey high school sports expert, and Kevin, real briefly on the Independence Division. Obviously, that division title's got to go through Cedar Creek with what they've done the past couple of years, but they're going to face some pretty tough challenges from teams like St. Joseph and Absegami. St. Joseph has Townsell back, the big running back, about 200 pounds, and I think they got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder this year. They kind of had a little bit of a down year in terms of St. Joseph, anyway, 7-4. Do you think anyone can really challenge Cedar Creek? I mean, obviously Cedar Creek's got to rebuild a lot of that offense.
Yeah, I think like you said, St. Joe's comes in as a team that is going to be a little quote unquote angry, I guess. Last year was not a typical St. Joe's season. Cedar Creek did lose an awful lot of guys. St. Joe's lost a few guys here and there as well. But I think coming into the season, like you said, until someone knocks off Cedar Creek, it runs through Cedar Creek. But I really look at that division this year, and I think St. Joe's is probably the team to beat. I think that they're gonna bounce back. I can't see them having another season of going 7-4. I think Paul Sacco has had these guys working. Townsell is one of the better running backs around in South Jersey. His name probably doesn't roll off your tongue as quickly as some other names do, especially with his first name, because I can't even pronounce it. I think we just
Quasin, I think.
Yeah, we just call him Q. Exactly. I think that's a safe way to do it. And I think he understands that too. But he's a pretty talented kid. I saw him play last year. I saw some nice things out of him, and add another year of maturity, and now this year, obviously I think being someone who's going to be a player that Paul Sacco is going to look to for leadership to run this team. I think St. Joe, kind of, not that 7-4 is awful, but I think they kind of maybe get back on the track of what St. Joe is used to, and and takes care of business. Obviously, I think that game with Cedar Creek later in the season, I believe it's towards the end of October, may be the game to tilt the scales as far as who wins the division.
And the thing about Townsend is, man, you got to be committed to stop him if you're an opposing defense. He's going to run it down your throat 20 to 25 times, maybe 30 times a game. So that might open up some things in the offense. But you really have to just sell out to stop that kid. I mean, he's a load. He's 200-plus pounds, and he's going to run it down your throat about 25 times a game.
Yeah, he's going to, like you said, he's going to be the main guy. He's going to be the guy that they're going to give the ball to in tough situations, and when they want to, when he's ripping off, 5, 6, 7 yards out of clip, he does that 4 or 5 times in a row, kind of gets himself going. And they also have a decent running back. I believe he's a sophomore this year. His last name's Byers. I want to say his first name's Jada. I can't be completely sure or not, but he played a decent amount last year as a freshman, and had some flashes of showing some real good talent. So he's going to be maybe he's the off back for them this year, but definitely you can expect Q to get the ball and be one of the more productive backs in South Jersey.
I could see them averaging about 40 carries a game as a team.
Well, that's St. Joe football.
Yep.
We're going to run it and run it and run it. We're occasionally going to throw it. Sometimes when we throw it, I've been at many St. Joe games where the ball's gone in the air and the end result has not been good, and you just look at Coach Sacco and he just has this look on his face like, I know we should have just ran the ball instead. So, they're a team they're a team like a West Deptford, like a Delsey that generates its success by running the football, and I think that we're looking for another year of running the football down in Hamilton and seeing how that works out.
Great stuff as always, Kevin. We're up against the break. Got to let you go, but we'll check in with you next week and we'll talk some more West Jersey Football League.
Hey, it sounds good. Looking forward to it.
All right, man. Have a great weekend, Kevin.
You too. Thanks again.